Welcome back to the Brent and Austen Show, streaming on the Action Sports Jax 24/7 network.
All right, here we go at noon on a Whataburger Wednesday. If you're looking for something to do for lunch, Whataburger is a fantastic place to go. Austin spends a lot of Sundays at Whataburger. Coach was talking about Whataburger on September 24th and 25th with some activities happening. Bunch of different locations with Whataburger. They will be a part, by the way, of our Dream 18 golf tournament. We're getting breakfast served and some coffee and everything else from Whataburger will be a part of our festivities at the golf club at Southampton. That's coming up September 16th. We're getting things organized now, so we'll get more people signing up. We're still a few spots available. I always keep spots available, but I try not to get too heavy on the foursomes because we try to make it a cleaner, crisper day for everybody involved. And we also will be balancing the Dream 18 golf tournament with our show on Monday, September 16th. And that could be a lot of fun. I think we're going to do some play-by-play of the golf. That'll be our next big challenge. But we should be able to pull it off, we think. And hopefully that's coming off a Jags win as well. So be a part of it. Go to actionsportsjaxstream18.com. It's really a fun day. And it really hasn't changed that much because we don't want to change too much. It's fun for everybody on that Monday each and every year. We've raised over $250,000 now for local charities. Hopefully write a nice check to the local charities once again, and really like to make it just a cool day and a fun day. So I'd love for you to be a part of it. Tons of food on the course, drink, tea gifts, and more. I think you'll really like it if you get a chance to be a part of it. Brent Martineau here, Austin Lane in Las Vegas, training for his fight coming up on October 19th. I just got motivated for today's workout from Coach Jason Hamby in the booth. Doing a good job. And here he is. There he is. All right, guys. The floor, Austin. What do you say? What's the floor for the Jags? If things don't go well, I'm not talking health-wise. You heard me talking. Are they like a – can you picture this team winning just like 4 or 5 games if things didn't go well?
No, absolutely not. I mean, realistically – and I was actually a little surprised by your answer, Brent, because I thought it'd be a little higher. Because the way I look at it, and once again, assuming that everyone can stay 100% healthy, assuming that Trevor Lawrence is who we think he is, I honestly think the floor is 9 wins.
Wow.
Where you still have to have a winning season. Because I think if you don't, and we're talking about, once again, everyone being healthy, and say you're in like that 7-win range, well, then now we're talking about how, well, is Doug Peterson the man for the job? Is Trevor Lawrence the 7 or even 6 wins? I think there's going to be a lot of questioning. So to me, the floor is going to be 9 wins.
Wow, that's a big number. We both said, wow, Hamby, right? I mean, that's a high. But I kind of get what you're saying here. We have seen so many different renditions of the Jaguars. And that was such a Brent answer, by the way. Sunshine and Rainbow's kind of answer to go 9 wins on the floor. But I appreciate it out of you. Maybe it's just realistic. We've seen so many of these renditions. I'm almost to the point, Austin and Hamby, where if this thing doesn't go well, it's like, what's the formula to make it go well? It feels like they've done everything they need to do. Austin, they're going to run it more. They're going to check the box for me, get under center a little bit more. They've got veteran players. They have beefed up their offensive line. They added a wideout who is a playmaker and can run. They've added speed on both sides of the field. They've got veterans that have been through the battles. They got a coach that has won it. They got a franchise quarterback. Like, if this doesn't work, what will?
I mean, yeah, you're absolutely right, Brent. And here's the thing. Once again, we're saying that everyone's going to be healthy, right? Like, yeah, you could see, a couple players knock on wood. If they get hurt, then maybe it's justified for 6 wins or even less. But if everybody's healthy, I mean, people are like, is Trevor Lawrence an elite quarterback or not? Is Doug Peterson the man for the job or not? Like, we always talk about how you have the quarterback, you have the head coach. So if everyone stays healthy and you see this team on paper and you like what you see, and if they can't win at least 9 games, then yeah, I think it's kind of a failure. And then we're talking about how if Doug Peterson's the right man for the job or not, which I don't want to have those conversations. So I think it's realistic, and maybe it's wishful thinking, Brent. Maybe it's it's me being a little over embellished here, but I think it's realistic to say that if this team, doesn't hit that 9-win mark or go to the playoffs, it'll be an extreme disappointment. Once again, assume that everyone's going to be healthy.
Yeah. And by the way, that's what these perimeters are. We're not saying, and listen, they're going to get banged up. They're going to lose some guys, but in your point and our point here is like, you don't lose Trevor for 6 weeks and you don't lose Josh Hines-Allen and Trayvon. Right. Like your pieces are pretty much together. If you lose a guy for a game and guy's got an ankle or a hamstring, like those things happen. That's going to happen, quite frankly. And that also is another deal where you've challenged your depth. You've built your depth. So that should play out in your favor, especially playing young guys. Hamby, floor, ceiling. I know you haven't jumped in even on the ceiling. What do you feel like for the Jags? Again, realistic here. Get yourself out of Jacksonville and want to have a parade downtown. But realistically, what's the floor and ceiling?
Yeah, I think when you're talking about the range from floor to ceiling, it's probably a 6-game range between the two. And as much as I would love to believe that a 9-win season is the floor, the reality is when you look at our schedule, there's a lot of teams that are good too. And it's not just obviously about us and how we've improved. A lot of the teams that we're playing, especially in the first, in our division, have improved as well. And so if you look at the floor, when I'm thinking about the floor, I'm thinking how many close games could we lose? Because it's not like I think we're going to get, boat raced by a bunch of teams, but there's always a possibility that you could be the team this year that loses 5 one-score games, especially on the road when you're looking at, the Eagles and the Lions and, or even in the division when there's not technically a bad team that you can go ahead and count a dub against. So I think that you're looking at a 6-11 team as the floor because of going on the road and you could lose a lot of one-score games. On the flip side, 6-game range, the ceiling's got to be a 12-win team. I don't think you can really get above that because, like I said, the division is competitive. And if you take care of all the games that you're supposed to, but still you're not gonna go 5-0 against Jets, Eagles, Lions, Houston twice. Like I just don't see it happening. So I'll go 12 and 5.
Yeah, I kind of think that 12 is a high water mark. That's what I said. It's kind of squeezed together, maybe more so for even Austin squeezed together. So yeah, it's fascinating. Hey, Austin, a couple of things I want to get to, and I don't forget.
But I want to ask you this one follow-up question, quick because I like this exercise here, and I want to roll with it a little more. If you're Shad Khan, what's the floor? Because he's made it abundantly clear that you got to win now. So if you're Shad Khan and you're meeting with Doug Peterson after the season, what are you allowing from Doug Peterson to go, okay, this was okay. This is the floor. I wanted to go to the playoffs. I want to go on a Super Bowl, but I'm okay with this. What is the floor to Shad Khan?
That's a great question. I do think the answer here is different than you want it to be in reality, but I'll play the game. The answer is there's no owner, in my opinion, that goes in and says, if these guys win 7 games, they're fired. They just don't say that. That's not how it happens. It's how it looks, what it feels like, what's going on inside the building. There's chemistry. By the way, who you could get, how the players feel about you, the relationship between your GM and head coach. This is a loaded question when it comes to all that. That's how guys like Jason Garrett survived in Dallas for a very long time. I think that's how other folks like Gus Bradley survived another year here, or Doug Marrone and Dave Caldwell survived here. It doesn't always add up to what the win-loss column says, and I understand a lot of the other stuff involved hinges on that. But I'll play the game. And I would say the way Shad Khan delivered his message multiple times over the last month, the way he took out his checkbook this offseason, the way he got the city on board and everybody else to rally for this renovation of the stadium, I honestly think his floor is the playoffs. And I don't care if that's 8-9 or 9-8 or whatever. I think the floor is the playoffs. If it's got to be 11. Now, listen, if for some reason this is like a Patriots year where they went 11-5 and didn't make the postseason under Castle, and the Jags did that, there'd be a pass. But Austin, I think the floor for Shad is seeing the postseason.
Yeah, and I think I would agree with you there. I mean, I think he's kind of laid out all those expectations, to the media, to the team that we saw in the hunt and everything. I think that the playoffs are the bare minimum. And once again, a lot of things can happen. We'll see how this season shakes out. But if you don't go to the playoffs, then I wonder what those conversations with Doug Peterson, are going to be like, once again, assuming that there wasn't any catastrophic injuries that you could kind of use as an excuse.
Yeah, I agree. And here, Hamby, here's what happens. If that happens, if you don't make the playoffs this year, if you're the Jags, you start to go down this dangerous road of where other NFL teams have been before. Now, you can come back from it, but you go down these roads where you're like, okay, now the next year the heat is really on. The offseason, the heat's on. And you start grabbing. You start grabbing for stuff, and we've seen it around here, Hamby. You haven't probably seen it as closely, but we've been around this thing long enough to know, and Austin's been in buildings where you start grabbing at stuff, and you start reaching for the answers, and you kind of get out of that zone that you're trying to stay in. It's happening right now in Gainesville, right? I mean, Billy Napier's going to start reaching, and he's going to start doing things not necessarily for the right reason that he feels is the best for their organization to go forward, but because it's the best way for them to survive.
Yeah.
Right? And when you do that, it's just a road that has a lot of bumps in it, most likely. Do some people end up with all four wheels still riding straight forward? Maybe, but not a lot. Not a lot of times it happens. And we just know. So that's how big this season is, Hamby. It sets that in motion, or it sets you into this winning mode now for Doug, 2 out of 3 years, another winning record 3 years in a row, playoffs back, or 2 out of 3 years, and one they should have been in. And now you can go forward, march to the stadium renovation with, all right, even if we didn't win a Super Bowl, we're going to win one by the end of the decade.
Yeah, it's almost where it is mandatory that the Jags take a step forward. There's leeway on how much of a step forward that has to be, but we have to go to the playoffs. That's number one. And I think I would agree with y'all that I think the floor as far as the Jags fans' expectations and what would allow for that excitement to build into the following year is to win a playoff game this year. That's the floor. Otherwise, I think you're right. I think the decisions become a lot less of how do we improve the roster and further improve the roster, and become a lot more of I just got to make decisions based off of job survival.
Yeah.
How do I stay one more year and buy myself one more year? And that's never the place you want to be.
All right, Austin, you got another part of that, or you good?
I mean, I'm with Hamby here because at the end of the day, if Doug Peterson meets with Shad Khan, it's not going to be, well, Mr. Khan, I'll tell you what, I mean, we went through a lot of great teams, and those teams got, like, Shad Khan is to the point now where he doesn't want to hear any of that. Like, when you're a businessman and you invest like you invested this past season, all you want to see is the returns. You don't want to see the excuses. You don't want to see, well, this happened. No, all you want to see is the return on your investment. And he's maybe invested more than he ever has before. So obviously that return has to be bigger. So I agree with Hamby here. I agree with you, Brent. I think the floor, at least for Shad Khan and maybe a lot of Jaguars fans, as I think it's to the point where it should be now, is the playoffs. And it's refreshing. To me, it's refreshing to kind of have those conversations because we haven't had the floor be like that for a while, it seems like, here in the city.
Yeah, great.
So to me, that says something in itself where it's like, okay, well, look at how much expectations have gone up now. That's a good thing. Now you just got to follow through with it.
Yeah, they've raised the bar, right? They've raised the standard. They've, even if they just with the back-to-back, even with disappointment, they've still raised it. They've raised even the disappointing barrier. I mean, it used to be 3 wins, 4 wins, 5 wins, 2 wins, whatever. They've raised the disappointing barrier. And that's like a lot of teams around the league have that. Like if you're 500, it's a disappointing year. Jags haven't been there, quite frankly. And now it kind of feels like they are there. To all the things you said, I'll go back to just a very simplistic thought to really sum up 2024 for the Jags. It was, in my opinion, one of the biggest off seasons. Gene Fournette told us he thought it was the biggest. It ended up being the biggest off season in recent NFL history, and one of the biggest ever, really, if you add all of it together, but definitely the biggest in Jags history. And now because of that, and because of where the direction of this franchise could go or back to, this becomes one of the biggest seasons in Jags history. And that's easy to say every year. Every year is a big year in the NFL. It is. Quite frankly, it is. But for year 30, their 30th season, this one feels as big as it gets for me. Because you're either starting to go on this train of winning and winning and winning, or you're falling back into the train we've been on for the last 15 years, which has been like maybe a nice moment here or there, but overall you're in Loserville. So that's how big it is. Hey, I wanted to ask you about something Armstead said yesterday in the Stuart Weber interview. He said, I've played all techniques and positions. He said, I've played anything from 0 technique to 9 wide or wide 9 spot. Yeah. And so he's comfortable playing all these different spots. Can you take us through, like, how does a guy play all of those different? And I know you think he's more comfortable potentially in the 3 technique, and that's where he's done really well. But that's a pretty vast skill set and not very common, is my guess.
No, it's not very common. I mean, first of all, we look at Eric Armstead. It helps to be the size that you are, like an Eric Armstead or like Calais Campbell was, right? Because, I mean, you can teach a lot of techniques and a lot of styles, but you can't teach size. So the first thing he has going for him is definitely the size. Now, when you talk about whether you're playing, a 0, a 1, a 3 technique, I mean, to be fair, Brent, if we're talking about a 4-3 defense and you talk about a 3 technique or you talk about a 5 technique, I mean, it's comparable. Now, the difference is like out of a 5 technique, sometimes when you're playing half the tackle, well, then that tight end can come and double team you, as opposed to a 3 technique where sometimes maybe you're getting double teamed by a tackle and a guard, right? So it's honestly, it's not as complicated as it sounds in terms of like the principles of playing those spots. It's just the timing and the speed happen so much differently. When you're playing a 5 technique, you're on the, you're farther away from the ball. Things just happen a little slower. There's a little more space, a little more time to kind of get what's going on. From a 3 technique or from a nose technique, it happens that split second faster. And then when we talk about like a wide 9, like he was referring to, I mean, that's a defensive end's dream right there, is a wide 9. Because when you talk about a wide 9 defense, and I played this with Jim Schwartz in Detroit. I think when Doug Peterson was there in 2017 with Philly, they won a Super Bowl. I think Jim Schwartz implemented that wide 9 technique. I think he was there. If not, it would have been the next year he got into Philly. But Doug Peterson is also familiar with the wide 9. The wide 9 was great because you don't have to worry about any kind of double teams, anything. All you got to do is protect your edge, right? And as defensive guys, you want to pin your ears back and you just want to, fly around and let loose. I don't have to worry about, okay, well, I got to make sure my step's good. Okay, is this tight end going to double team me? Is this guard going to double team me? Is it be some kind of pull block? The wide 9 eliminates all of that. And that's kind of the basis of a wide 9 defense. It's letting your athletes be athletes, letting them pin their ears back and not have to worry about all the distractions and stuff in the backfield. If you're asking me what I love to play against Miami, if I had it my way, I'm going wide 9 all day because they thrive off motion. They thrive off confusion in the backfield. And the last thing I want is guys on defense having to overthink things. Guys on defense saying, okay, well, this guy's going to motion, which I'll have to double. To hell with that. Go on a wide 9, pin your ears back, and go play football. And, yeah, and this is from Hamby right here. This is a kind of a great teaching point. So as you can see, it would be the viewer's left. The player's right defensive ends in a wide 9 technique. And basically his only job is to attack that outside shoulder of the tight end and to go through him. So it makes things a lot easier. Now, to kind of, and this kind of long-winded conversation here, Brent, but to get back to the case of Eric Armstead playing all spots, I think that there's a few guys in the NFL that can do it, but once again, you have to be strong enough, number one, to take on double teams, whether you're in a 3 technique like we see here or a 2-eye technique, but you have to be elusive enough and quick enough to be on the outside. So that's why you don't see a lot of guys doing this, just because their skill sets kind of, whether you're more catered to the outside or the inside, few guys can do both because few guys have that speed, athleticism, and that size to do everything.
Yeah, and listen, if there's one thing I believe this defense changed from last year to this year the most, and there's probably a lot of things, it's what you just said about what Armstead could do, but Trayvon Walker could do, and other players on their roster can do. They gained weight to be able to take on those double teams, in my opinion, Austin. And I think what you just described about Armstead, Trayvon Walker, they feel can do a lot of those same things, right?
No, well, absolutely. Once again, you talk about a guy who has size, who has speed, who has athleticism. Yeah, that's Trayvon Walker to a T. So could he go down to a 3 technique and be fine? Absolutely. But you know how I feel about it, Brent. You're talking about a guy who had 10 sacks last season, and I'll keep saying this till I'm blue in the face. You talk about a guy on the edge who had 10 sacks last season, who's still kind of coming into his own, who's still kind of learning the position of edge rusher, and look how good he did. I just hope that you don't hamper him, you don't stifle him now by moving him down the inside a little bit when he showed so much promise last year on the edge.
Welcome back to the Brent and Austin Show, streaming on the Action Sports Jax 24/7 network.
As I look at Jacksonville, I saw when I was leaving my house this morning some blue skies down there in St. Johns County. I don't think the blue skies have ever made it to downtown, at least yet. We'll see if they do a little bit later. Brent Martineau, Austin Lane in Vegas, Jason Hamby here. So a lot of chatter going on today in the chat, so appreciate you guys hanging out. Daniel Kilkenny says, no matter this year's outcome, at least Doug has stabilized us and more respected around the league. I would agree with that for now. I want a Super Bowl win, but right now I'm glad that I'm excited about the season, not paying attention to who's first pick next year. I would agree. You should be excited. I mean, there's belief. There's a lot of belief, and there should be. There should be belief that Trevor's going to, have his best year yet. The Jags are going to win. I don't know if you guys are ready. I kind of teased this, but maybe I'll wait another day because I don't want to put you on the spot. Or if you're ready to go, we can. But from a bold take standpoint, you want another day, Austin, on the offense and defense? Or could you go?
Because I've said my bold stuff before. And they wouldn't be right of me if I changed it up now. Like, my bold prediction on defense has to change now because Travis Gibson's no longer a Jacksonville Jaguar. But I'm still hoping for at least, over 6.5 sacks with him on the Seahawks, just so I can say I was right.
Super sleeper.
But my bold prediction that I did – say what?
Super sleeper from Furniture Source.
Super sleeper from Furniture, absolutely. But my bold prediction on offense was the fact that I think Tank Bigsby is going to have more rushing touchdowns than Travis Etienne.
Good. Yeah, you did. I remember that. That's a good one. That's a good one. Here's why I thought of this. I'm not I don't really do this I know that this is a pretty popular thing to do during the season or before the season. I don't usually fall into this, but here's my confidence level that I think this is a bold take that actually could become reality. And I'm not talking about the first week or two of the season. I think the Jags at some point this year, with some depthness to the season, some more than just a small sample, will lead the NFL in scoring.
Okay. So are you saying for like a week? I mean, when you say that, like when the season's done, like be more specific. Are we talking about like a weekend? They're the highest scoring team in the NFL.
Well, that's why
for a quarter.
Yeah, well, that's why I tried to say it. Like, it's definitely not. You can't do it in the first 2 weeks of the season. That's not what I'm going. I'm going with you get to week 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, somewhere in there, and in that span, you you might be you're going to be the leading team offensively points per game. Now, the reason why I don't say it at the end is I think there's a lot of stuff at the end of the season that, like, let's just take 2017 when the Jags did well. They had clinched the division at like 10-4, and they lost the last two games. The last two games like hardly mattered. And so that was why I didn't want to necessarily be like, okay, well, they're still going to score, more than anybody else by the end of it. I just think even if they're in that mix, if my bold take is correct, that means they'll probably finish as like a top 3-4 scoring team in the league, even if they're not the highest scoring team in the league. Mm-hmm. So I just feel like this offense is going to be really good. I think what we thought from last year is actually going to take place this year. I think we were a year early. I think the Calvin Ridley excitement turned into a little bit more clunky than we thought it was going to be, is essentially the way it worked. I think your Tank Bigsby thought is good for this year. Obviously didn't play out last year. I think you've got guys really motivated, and then Trevor, on top of that, will have his best season in the NFL. And the one thing that's better than year 2 in the same system, quite frankly, is year 3. Mm-hmm. So why not? I think the Jags have the ingredients. Obviously, the offensive line is a big part of this. I think my concern with the offensive line, going back to that ceiling and floor stuff, are they too old, Austin? 32 years old with Sheriff, 32 years old with Morse, or maybe he's 31, but I think they're both 32. And do those guys have enough left in the tank to help carry the offensive line of the Jaguars? That's where I could see the downfall of their offense, and they wouldn't have enough answers with Fortner or even a Cooper Hodges to recover from that.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the biggest question mark. And honestly, like, if I'm comparing other teams around the NFL on offense, like, call me crazy, Brent, but like, to me, is like the offensive, like the biggest worry, like offensive line. Like, okay, maybe like you're worried about your wide receivers or like your true one receiver. Maybe you're worried about your running back a little bit. Okay, maybe you're worried about like the tight end, maybe even the quarterback. But like, you almost get a little extra sense of anxiety when you talk about an offensive line being the Achilles heel possibly of your team.
Yeah. Well, the reason why, Austin, is because you don't have a lot of fixes. Like, forget about, people don't usually love their top 5 guys, never mind the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th guy. I actually think the Jags do have some depth that they don't mind, but I'm not sure it's at the guard and center position. So, like, that could be problematic. But anyway, that's my bold take on especially the offensive side of it. The defensive side, I've gone in a bunch of different ways, but I'm going to go with kind of something I've been consistent with. I think Andre Sisco is going to have a Pro Bowl season, and maybe even an All-Pro season. I think he will put his name amongst the best safeties in the National Football League this year. The problem with doing some of that with Jacksonville is they never seem to get the love they deserve. I mean, Foye-Oluokan's been searching for that for a while. But Sisco will have a chance in a primetime game on a Monday night. And what else? They got a Sunday night? Yeah, they do. They have a Sunday night against Philly. Or actually, didn't he have a pick 6 early in his career in Philadelphia? I think he did in that rainy game when the Jags got off to a good start. So that's going to be my bold take on the defensive side, Austin. I think Andre Sisco is about to have a career year, and one that's going to be awarded or rewarded with some nice accolades at the end of it.
Man, my bold take. I mean, I was really keen on that Travis Gibson one. I mean, there's like the keyword being bold here. Like, okay, well, they can be a top 10 defense, top 8 defense. Like, I mean, they could be like that. That's not really bold to me. So I have to go with the bold pick here. How about this one? Trayvon Walker is going to have more sacks than Josh Allen.
Thank you for playing my game and getting right into the next segue. That is good. You know what I thought you might say, and I think this is an interesting bold take opportunity for the Jags, is that they're like top 3 in sacks in the league. Like, why not? You've got the best tandem. You just added Armstead. you've got a pretty deep line, and you're going to maybe mix guys in around the line of scrimmage, like maybe it's a Devin Lloyd or somebody else. It looks like they're going to be so aggressive. Why not? Why couldn't they be if these guys continue to blossom? I mean, is it out of the realm that both Trayvon and Josh Allen have over 15 sacks this season? Seems unlikely, but they could.
I mean, theoretically, no, it is a little unlikely, but they definitely could because, like, here's what I foresee happening. I foresee if you move Trayvon Walker down, like, Josh Allen's probably going to be on the edge most of the time, right? Like, he had 17.5 sacks last year. You're not going to bump him down, even though he maybe gained a little weight. But I can see teams, like, game planning around Josh Allen, whether it's schematic-wise of rolling away from him, whether it's double-teaming him. I can just see teams game planning for Josh Allen because, well, last season shows that he should be game planned for. I think if you move around Trayvon Walker and you don't just keep him on the edge like I want you to, but he's playing the 3 technique, maybe you bump him down to the nose and in pass rush situations, whatever the case may be. I feel like with his speed, athleticism, and strength that he can still get home. So that's why, once again, very, very bold prediction, but I'll say that Trayvon's got more sacks than Josh Allen.
Okay, so this feeds perfectly into what I wanted to ask you about. Josh Allen met with the media on Monday. He was asked about a bunch of different things. And one, I think I'm just going to paraphrase, but the question was something to the effect of how can you even be better, right? I mean, you just came off a 17.5 sack season and got paid and everything else. So here's what his answer was in this Ryan Nielsen defense, and see if anything catches your attention. Listen closely.
I think I'm a better player, overall player than last year. I think I got put in a different position to where it's like I can become a better football player overall, which is also going to help me with my pass rush as well. I think I became a smarter pass rusher. I think I gotten a lot better as well. I'm ready to see my strides going on to this year. Not expecting, not expecting me to do too much as I did last year in the role that I had to play. But when my role is being called, I am expected to do what I've done, and I'm excited to do that. So my teammates know that, and they have all faith and trust that I can, play at a high level, and that gives me even more confidence to go out there and just, play ball.
Okay, so I know you're still kind of listening to the end of it, Austin, out there in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Anything catch you? And it's just not a trick question, by the way, but
no, for sure. No, so I had to play it off my phone here because I couldn't hear it during our stream. But yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing about the soundbite that you're looking for me to say is the fact that he alluded to not doing what he did last year.
Very good.
Like now, I kind of came in at the last tail end of that, but like not doing what I did last year, but then when my name's called upon to go something along those lines. But yeah, that obviously sticks out to me because I'm not sure of that context.
Yeah, and so that's what caught my attention in real time. And again today, like I was listening in real time. I wasn't in a place where I could ask questions on Monday, but I was listening, and so I was like, "Well, what did he just say?" And then he just said it again, and we can play it again in a moment or two. But what you just said is what he said. He said, "I'm not going to basically be in the same role." And the way I interpret it is like I'm not going to be in a position to maybe get like 17.5 sacks. Like I did last year, but when my number's called, I'll be able to deliver. And what I don't know is this: there was some earlier conversation, just to give this context, of asking about the depth and how many snaps. Like he had played, I think, in his last 2 years. Somebody brought up a number: 77% of the snaps. And the idea in this is not to play that many. Now he'll still play a lot. But with the rotation that they have, with the guys they've brought in, with the way Nielsen wants to do it, they want to keep them a little fresher, it sounds like. He might be in more of a rotation where he comes off the field. Maybe he's not out there for as many snaps. Now, again, it might be 70% instead of 77. So I wonder, Austin, if he meant that, or did he mean, in this defense, I'm not going to be in position to be the only guy getting the sacks, or just me and Trayvon. It's going to be a myriad of guys doing it, and collectively we'll come up with the number we want to get to.
Yeah, so we've seen this in the preseason. I lean towards more about him referring to maybe, the rotation of the defensive line, playing 4 or 5 plays, you rotate in, keeping guys fresh, keeping guys healthy. Then obviously when the game's on the line, then you go with your workhorses and let them eat. That's what I thought he was referring to. Schematic wise, if he's talking about and honestly, Brent, I don't even know what it would look like. Like, do you mean you're dropping back into coverage more? Do you mean that you're playing more of a linebacker role? Like, listen, I can try to come with you on Trayvon Walker being bumped on the inside, but what I can't come with Ryan Nielsen, and once again, Ryan Nielsen I trust, is to take away your best edge rusher and say, all right, you gotta do something different now. Like, the dude had 17 and a half sacks season last year. Let's not overcomplicate things too much. He's a great edge rusher. Let's let him keep, rushing the edge, getting after the quarterback, and then worry about the other things. But Josh Allen shouldn't be a thing that you got to move around and try new things with, because he's shown that he can do it with what he did last year.
Yeah, listen, I think, first of all, I can answer, I believe, some of those questions. He's not dropping back into coverage. Like, him and Trayvon are going to have their hand in the dirt more than they even did under the old scheme. So I don't think they're going to do that. What's also fascinating about what Josh says in this soundbite is I think I'm going to be a better overall football player. This is going to allow me to be a better overall football player. And so I don't know. I don't know what it means. I think I can make some guesses. This whole deal where you're going to have to take on a couple more blockers, you're going to be really stout in the run game. He's already good in the run game. That's what makes him such a good all-around player, is he's good in the run game, where a lot of those guys that go get the sacks aren't necessarily great in the run game sometimes. We've had that with Jan in the past. But that's not it with Josh. So are they going to ask him to do more in that part of the game, more attraction to maybe double teams Austen, so he takes some of the attention from the offense, and that allows other people to open up? Is that part of his role, is to draw more people toward him, which opens things up for the guys in the middle, or Trayvon on the other side, or the linebackers, however they want to do it? I guess we're going to see it. But it was pretty alarming to me that he said all this in one 25-second soundbite, which again we'll play in a second. It's like, hey, I'm going to be a better all-around football player. I feel like I am better. But I probably won't be able to do what I did last year in terms of the numbers. It is kind of the way I interpret him talking. Yet when I get my opportunities, I'm going to eat. Pretty wild.
Yeah, and
25 seconds.
Well, it's weird coming from Josh too, just because of all the things that you've heard from, when he's talked to us on the show and everything. He takes pride. He's worried about legacy, right? He's not satisfied with what he's done so far in his career. He wants to reach another echelon. He wants to be an All-Pro. He wants to be a Hall of Famer one day. So when you use that kind of verbiage, it's weird then that you're going to go from that to, and then when I get my opportunities, when my number gets called, all this stuff. Because to me, the old Josh Allen been I'm going to dominate. I'm going to do what I always do. And it seems like that dialogue has changed a little bit. Now, whether it's the role of, will he command a lot more attention? So will that, obviously allow other guys to shine? Maybe. And that's kind of what you want. When you're a top 3 highest paid edge rusher in the NFL, when you just had a 17 sack season, that's going to command attention, right? It's going to command more attention than you had last year. So I get all of that. My biggest thing though, Brent, is if I'm watching week 1 against Miami and I see Josh Allen and Trayvon Walker in 3 techniques, and then we see Eric Armstead and Mason Smith on the outside, I'm going to lose my mind. Just to let you know.
I don't blame you either.
Just to let you know, I'm gonna go postal. Okay, I'm just saying right now. Just a fair warning. A fair warning. This Sunday, when we're watching that Jaguars Miami game, Pitbull playing in the background, and if I see Josh Allen and Trayvon Walker in the 3 technique, and I see the big guys on the outside, you might as well just lose my connection for this app thing on Monday, and not even have me on the show, because I'm going to be going ballistic.
Let's put a bow on this conversation just so you guys can hear what we talked about. If you didn't catch it in the first soundbite from Josh, just hear it again. And just to kind of wrap this all together, here's Josh from Monday, and this is kind of what we've been talking about the last few minutes.
I think I'm a better player overall player than last year. I think I got put in a different position to where it's like I can become a better football player overall, which is also going to help me with my pass rush as well. I think I became a smarter pass rusher. I think I gotten a lot better as well. I'm ready to see my strides going on to this year. Not expecting, not expecting me to do too much as I did last year in the role that I had to play. But when my role is being called, I am expected to do what I've done, and I'm excited to do that. So my teammates know that, and they have all faith and trust that I can, play at a high level, and that gives me even more confidence to go out there and just, play ball.
So that's Josh Allen the other day. There's one other possible thought of what he said, and I'll probably ask him a little bit about this, maybe even today, what it seemed in the locker room. The other thing, as he said it a second, that's why I like listening to these things a couple of times. And Austin, I wonder if he meant the things that you were talking about. Like, my role isn't going to be expanded to the point of hand in the dirt sometimes, standing up other times, going out in coverage other times. I wonder if he kind of meant that in relation to, I'm not going to be in that same position to have to do as much as I did last year, rather than like the sack total.
Yeah, I mean, that's a possibility. I just think that we need a little more context to what he was referring to, because you can take this a lot of ways. And yeah, now I'm freaking out, hitting the panic button before I have to go train. So I appreciate you sharing that soundbite. Fantastic. Yeah, I'm gonna need some kind of clarification, because listen, Brent, I get that, and we talk about this all the time, right? Like, every defensive coordinator is gonna have their own philosophy, have their own attitude about things, and have their own scheme. And I get all of that, and so far, like I've said many times on this show, and Ryan Nielsen I trust. But when you have a guy coming off the season like Josh Allen did, and when you have a guy who's getting paid like Josh Hines-Allen is, you almost got to go, hey, I don't want to mess this up too much, because we had a lot of success last year with him. So hopefully we get some clarification with that, and hopefully whatever he's referring to, it's not going to throw it off so much of we're not going to get a repeat performance of the Josh Hines-Allen that we saw last year.
Panic Button makes an appearance here from Vegas, by the way. If you hit that thing, maybe you win the jackpot in Vegas. Maybe that's what really will happen. Daniel Kilkenny says, Bold Take, no running back averages over 3.4 yards per rush all year. I think he's talking about on the defensive side. I hope so. Defensive Bold Take, they break both team records for total sacks and interceptions. That would be something, which I think both came in 2017, I'm pretty sure. Josh, by the way, with a big year, becomes the all-time franchise sack leader. And not even that big of a year by his standards, but a pretty big year. And he can do that. Just one last thing about what you just said about hitting the panic button and don't change too much around. The bottom line is the Jags have left themselves open for criticism on the defensive side if this doesn't go well under Ryan Nielsen. And the reason for that is, if you just take Trayvon Walker and Josh Allen, Austin, they've both put on about 12 to 15 pounds. And Lloyd has done the same. So you took two guys that were the best tandem guys in the National Football League a year ago, and you said, hey, we love you, but we think you'd be better with more weight on for our scheme. If that backfires and those guys don't produce, that's going to be one of the reasons I point to that they didn't produce.
Yeah, it's not going to be a good look. I mean, whether these guys wanted to change their bodies on their own or whether they had a little, external motivation, that's fine. But then it just has to work out.
Yeah.
Or else it just kind of seems like a wasted opportunity here. And once again, like we can't say this enough. You have something special when you have two legit bookends, 1A and 1B. Arguably the best 1-2 punch from the edge in the entire NFL. If you want to move guys around, that's fine. But it still has to look dominant, because we saw dominance last year. And the last thing you want to do is go away from that set dominance. So whatever it looks like, it doesn't matter. You want to put them both inside, okay, but it better look like dominance.
Well, business picks up today for the Jacksonville Jaguars. They had a day off yesterday. They've really had, 4 out of the last 5 days off. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Tuesday. And obviously a lot of game planning going into the Miami Dolphins. And Now they ramp it up a little bit on the practice field. My assumption is they'll be inside today, but we'll see. Doug Peterson talks in a bit. Trevor Lawrence talks at 12:20, and then we'll be in the locker room a little bit later. So that is the schedule here on this Wednesday. Just a friendly reminder, tomorrow Jaguars All Access starts from String Sports Brewery, and we will have Christian Kirk scheduled to join us on the show in Springfield. So that's at 7 o'clock on Fox 30, and here we go on the season, ready to rock and roll. Now, you had to go train at the end of the show yesterday, Austin, and we got into, in the last 10 minutes of it, this is going to be like a continuation topic. We haven't done this. We should have put at the end of the show, to be continued. That would have been the right way to do it. I used to love that, by the way, in the shows. Back in the day, when it'd be to be continued, I was like, oh, that's going to be awesome. Can't wait to watch the next one. That was before you could just, watch the next one 2 minutes later. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but binge watching has definitely kind of changed it a little bit. But I think, in terms of cliffhangers, Game of Thrones has done a really good job of, leaving you by your, the seat of your pants looking forward to the next season or the next episode. So I get exactly what you're saying. I'm sure Yellowstone does the same thing.
Yeah, it still does happen to some degree, but it was something about in 1991 or whatever, seeing a show that would come on once a week and the to be continued ... be like, ooh, that's a little different. It didn't happen every week. So it's kind of fun. So our to be continued is a little bit of the depth chart. And yesterday we put up the depth chart late in the show, and I think something caught your attention as well. I know you weren't part of that part of the show, so let me get your take on it first, because we discussed a couple of things that got our attention. What did you think of the depth chart?
So, there's a lot of oars being used, so I'm not sure there's any kind of gamesmanship, whether it's from Ryan Nielsen's defense or on Doug Peterson's side. Are the Miami Dolphins really putting a lot into this in terms of, this guy's starting or this guy's a nickel, things like that? But I think two things stick out to me. The top thing, and, I'm not going to say his name, Brent, because supposedly I don't like him, but, I think it's a little surprising that number 33 right now is not listed as a starter. He's kind of the or guy. And I feel like, if you were going to cement him as the starter, you probably would have put him before Chad Muma.
Yeah, that was the thing that got our attention as well. The Jags are going to mix up. The whole linebacking thing is bizarre and kind of wild to me. And I kind of explained it like this. They're going to interchange, and 70% of the time they're going to have two linebackers on the field, and they think their linebackers are interchangeable. But there was a news conference, in camp where Foye Oluokun is talking about playing the weak side. It's like, yeah, I've done it before, and, I like the idea of it and this defense, and it's going to accentuate some of my game. But, yeah, I've done it before. He was answering questions about that. Yet every depth chart that they've released, and we know the preseason ones were kind of phony. I don't think this one's that phony. Every depth chart, he's been the Mike. Now, that doesn't mean he's going to be the weak side. Now, he can play both. I think the other guys also can play both. So that's where I go with the interchangeable part. But I think the headline here is exactly what you just said. Why wouldn't Devin Lloyd be ahead of Chad Muma? And is this an indication that their no depth chart kind of preseason showcased that Muma, who appears to have shined more than Lloyd, actually won the job over Lloyd? I guess we'll find out Sunday afternoon when they roll it out.
Yeah, I think we are going to find out for sure this Sunday afternoon. Looking at this, it appears that he has won the job in Chad Muma. Once again, I'm not sure how much advantage, how much gamesmanship you have if you're the Jacksonville Jaguars by saying, hey, we're going to start Chad Muma, wink, wink, and then we're going to actually have Devin Lloyd be the starter. Do you think Mike McDaniel is going to take the entire playbook and just throw it in the trash because now all of a sudden Lloyd's out there instead of Muma? Absolutely not. And, I've said this the entire preseason, and it started, the first game against Kansas City, and I haven't budged on my thoughts. I thought Devin Lloyd should be playing on the outside in terms of linebacker. I didn't think he was really suited for the middle linebacker spot. I thought he had a couple problems fitting in holes, drop back into coverage and everything. And I think Chad Muma's done better. So whether this is gamesmanship and we'll see Lloyd starting, or whether Chad Muma has earned the starting spot, I just think Lloyd was better suited for the outside.
Well, let me say this or ask you this. For week one, is Muma a better fit anyway because of his ability to cover more or move better against the speed of Miami?
I mean, I think when we talk about speed, when you say Devin Lloyd probably has more speed than Chad Muma does.
Yeah, I think so, but I don't know if he plays faster.
I'm not sure like what their. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure like what their 40-yard dashes were, but my one of my biggest concerns, and I've said this time and time again in preseason, is Lloyd was having problems drop back into coverage. And whether it's going to be on a tight end in Jonnu Smith, whether it's going to be out of one of those explosive backs in the backfield for the Miami Dolphins, I just felt like Lloyd didn't feel comfortable with that middle linebacker spot. So if you're asking me, like, are they better suited off having Muma there because he's quicker, better in coverage? All I know is from what I've seen in the preseason, Brent, is that Chad Muma seems to be a little more sound, a little more disciplined, and a little more comfortable playing that spot. So that's all I need to see in terms of who I want out there against the Miami Dolphins offense that's going to make your linebackers work.
Yeah, keep in mind this on Lloyd, by the way. He gained weight. He put on 12 to 15 pounds, right, to make him really more stout up around the line of scrimmage, we think, against the run, but also if he does move up there and rushes the passer a little bit. So there's that. He also has not been great in coverage. So take that away from him, and this defense should allow some of those guys that had been in coverage to not be in coverage as much anyway. So I think those pieces add up to, all right, well, we wondered if this is going to be a big mismatch because the linebackers are going to have to cover a little bit against the Miami Dolphins, so maybe this just fits a little bit better for Chad Muma to be in there. Maybe there's just more confidence. Maybe Muma's just taking a step. Like, what is the deal? Or maybe this depth chart doesn't really matter. I do think it does matter, though. I think why wouldn't you put him there? And so, to me, this is a little bit of a passing from Chad Muma. Now, he's got to keep the job, got to play well, and there's a little more confidence right now, I think, in Muma than Lloyd. And now we're going to start to really question that draft pick and the career of Lloyd, because we thought, and I thought, at least coming into this year, just the last couple of months and all the dissection of this roster and team, and we kind of said this, Austin, if Devin Lloyd could take a step, if he could find it, he's got the talent, we believe, to be able to do it. But if he could find it, then this defense could be elevated that much more with all the other parts that they have. They haven't gotten the supreme play out of him just yet that they had been hoping for. So to me, this is an indication, not that they're giving up on him, but that Muma has definitely passed him by. And if you look at camp, Lloyd's been pretty quiet overall. How many times have we said number 33 at least, hey, jumped out and did this? Muma was all over the place in these preseason games and even a little bit in practice. So it does kind of fit, and I think you got to give credit to the coaching staff to say, hey, we don't care where you were drafted. We think this guy gives us the better chance to perform.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think Trent Baalke needs, well, I don't say he needs, but he would like Lloyd to be the starter, right? Because then it makes you look better as a GM. My biggest thing, and once again, take what you want out of this depth chart, is now they have Foye back at middle linebacker. Now, if you go back to the preseason, even when they're in nickel, Foye was actually playing the outside, and Lloyd was playing middle linebacker. So, like, that was a thing. You know, whether it was smoke and mirrors or not, like, they did have Foye playing, you know, the outside and Lloyd playing the middle. Now on this depth chart, we have, you know, Foye essentially being the Mike, and then Chad Muma being, you know, the Will or the Sam. So even on a nickel, it seems like he'd be the off-ball linebacker. My biggest thing is, if this is the case, then what were you doing in the preseason? Right, where if we see, once again, Foye Luke, and even in nickel, playing his usual spot, which he played last year, then what was the point of rotating guys in and out for the preseason? Because it didn't matter. So, like, that's the biggest thing I'll be watching as well, is if Foye is going to pick up where he left in preseason, or if they're just going to move him back to what he did last year.
Well, the one thing that's hard to find out for sure is this team didn't play a lot with these guys on the field at the same time, right? Like with their whole complement of players. I mean, Foye missed the first couple of games. Forget how many reps he got in that third one. Probably played a decent amount in that third one. But Yeah, these guys were in. Not
Well,
Muma
Foye
played.
played the first series, didn't he?
He played the
I'm
first
sorry,
series.
Didn't Foye play the first series against Kansas City?
Yeah, and that was it. And then he was out. That's what I'm saying. They didn't play a lot.
Okay.
And they're not giving anything up in that first preseason game. So I just don't know how much we can. Yeah, we've got that, but I don't know how much we can read into it. You know what I mean? So I still think there's just something about this whole preseason more than any other one where Nielsen has tried to play coy, and I mean he does not want to give. I've been in production meetings where he does not want to give up a lot of the tell, but I do think they feel like there's a lot of pieces that interchange. I think this goes right back to, and this is what I said yesterday, Austin. This goes back to the Armstead, maybe Trayvon Walker situation, where Armstead, by the way, on this depth chart, not this one because you're now seeing the Miami Dolphins, but has defensive tackle next to his name, right where you want him to be. So I'm interested to get your thoughts on that. But the Antonio Johnsons and Darnell Savages, those interchangeable pieces that we've been talking about these last few weeks, I think the linebacking core has a little bit of that in it. Now, we can all debate where someone fits better, but I think they think they can do both. So it'll be interesting to see how much those guys move around instead of just cookie cutter place them in a certain spot. As for Armstead, were you pleased to see him on the depth chart at that defensive tackle spot, or is that just a matter of, well, we got to put 3 names on there and there's only 2 edge guys?
Yeah, I put a lot more stake into to the Chad Muma or Lloyd thing more than I did the Eric Armstead defensive tackle spot. Yeah, he's going to be the starter someplace, right? We all know that. So whether he's playing on the edge or he's actually be in the middle, yeah, I mean, I happy to see Armstead at defensive tackle, sure, but I took it with a grain of salt, knowing that knowing Nielsen, he could be on the outside as well. But obviously, it's good to see him as a starting guy, and you expect him to play in some kind of capacity against the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, I would agree. I think. I still think they're going to move around a little bit in that respect when it comes to Armstead and Trayvon Walker. Again, nobody's just going to sit here and play the spot that you're looking at. Not nobody, but I think these guys are going to move. And I think if you take Trayvon and Armstead right on that screen, if you take Muma, Oluokun, Lloyd, if you take Savage, and really got to go back with when they don't have a nickel corner listed here, so Antonio Johnson's going to be on the field. The other thing that stuck out to me, Austin, and again, they don't have nickel corner, but Jarian Jones is way down the depth chart. This is something I spoke about yesterday at the end of the show. Is that a little bit alarming that a DeAndre Prince is ahead of him at the corner spot? And obviously Buster Brown with some of his experience in the camp that he had.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of depth, it was probably my biggest surprise out of this entire depth chart so far is the fact that you have Jarian Jones listed so far down on it. I mean, being a third-round guy like he was, you put some pretty good stake into that. And so, yeah, I definitely was surprised with that. But at the same time, I mean, how many times were we really calling Jarian Jones' name, Brent, in the preseason in terms of flash plays?
Yeah, none. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah.
And this was a guy that we thought was going to be fighting for a starting spot for a little bit, possibly.
Yeah, we did. I mean, honestly, did. We wondered where he would be with the Darby Savage, Jarian Jones combo. I mean, that was a big offseason, big summer topic, if you will, and so it's pretty fascinating. Now you look at another draft pick, Mason Smith, way down there on the defensive tackle spot too. So. That's a second and third round pick that it doesn't look like going to get on the field immediately for the Jacksonville Jaguars. So we'll see how all of that shakes out for them. Just some interesting things on the depth chart for the Jags.